For 3 days, the most feared billionaire in America disappeared. No calls, no signals, no digital trace. Victor Hale, the man whose empire spanned 5 continents, whose face never smiled in magazines, whose voice could move markets, simply vanished. His estate in Montana silent, his penthouse in New York untouched, his private jet grounded, security teams frantic. Victor Hale was not a man who went missing. He was the man people feared would make them disappear. And yet on a Tuesday morning at 8:17 a.m., his lead security officer, Mason Darnell, entered the emergency control room at Hale Global and declared flatly, "We've lost him. No tracking chip, no GPS ping, no last-minute bookings, not even his signature encrypted signal, just silence." At first, the board assumed it was a tactic. Victor liked control, he hated noise. Maybe he was teaching someone a lesson. But by day 2, the fear turned inward. If someone could reach him, it meant no one was safe. And on day 3, when a hidden sub-basement camera triggered unexpectedly, the truth began to surface. What they found had nothing to do with money, enemies, or ransom. It was something no one, not even Mason, could have predicted. Something deeply human. The footage came from an off-grid property in rural Colorado. A forgotten cabin built decades ago. No electricity, no cameras, no digital footprint. The system shouldn't have been active. It wasn't on any of the security maps. But a sensor buried beneath the main doorway, meant to detect seismic movement, pinged twice. When Mason opened the footage, the grainy black and white image showed one thing: a figure, walking slowly into the cabin, alone. No phone, no bag, just a coat. And it was him, Victor Hale. Mason's hands tightened on the desk. He zoomed in. No guards, no convoy. No trace of the man who traveled with 4 ex-military operatives at all times. Victor had vanished, willingly. Within the hour, Mason and a small team were en route. They arrived in freezing wind, surrounded by pine trees and silence. The door to the cabin was unlocked. Inside, there was no heat, no food. Just a fireplace burning low, a wooden table. And Victor, sitting alone. His eyes were open, but not focused, and in his hand he clutched a photograph. Mason stopped just inside the threshold. "Sir?" he said cautiously. Victor didn't answer at first. His expression was distant, not vacant, but not present either. Mason stepped closer. There was no weapon, no sign of struggle, just the fire, crackling low, and the scent of old pine and dust. Victor finally blinked, slowly, as if waking up from a long dream. "You found me," he said, voice rough. Mason didn't respond. He didn't know whether to apologize or not. He was used to following orders. But this wasn't an order. It felt more like an ending. Victor held out the photo. It was old, faded. A woman holding a baby, sitting in the grass, sunlight catching her smile. On the back, scrawled in Victor's unmistakable handwriting, "I should have been there." Mason's stomach twisted. He knew the rumors. Everyone did. Victor Hale had once been married, for less than a year. The tabloids whispered about the divorce, the disappearance, the silence. But no one ever mentioned a child. Until now. "She died giving birth," Victor said, eyes still on the photo. "I wasn't there, I was closing a deal in Tokyo." Mason remained silent, standing in the same spot. He had seen Victor scream at presidents, fire CEOs with a glance, reduce billionaires to stuttering interns. But this man, this version, was different. "Her name was Rachel," Victor continued. "She said she didn't want me to miss it, that the money could wait. But I thought I had more time." He rubbed his thumb over the image like he could smooth the years away. "She called once the night before. I sent her to voicemail." The silence thickened. 3 hours later, she was gone. And the baby was gone too. Mason frowned. "Gone?" he asked. Victor nodded. "Her parents took her out of state. They blamed me. I didn't fight them." His eyes glistened. I was a monster then. Maybe I still am. Mason looked down. What changed now? Victor exhaled slowly. I got a letter. 2 weeks ago. Victor pulled the folded envelope from inside his coat and handed it to Mason. The paper was thin, creased, and lightly stained. The handwriting was careful, intentional. Mason read it silently. Dear Mr. Hale, I don't know you, but I know who you are. I know what the world says about you. But I also know my mother loved you once. And I think it's time I ask, who are you now? L. No signature, no address. Just the letter. Victor watched Mason carefully. I came here to remember who I was before I became whatever I am now. Mason didn't ask questions. Not about who L was, not about why Victor had chosen to disappear rather than respond. He just asked, are you ready to go back? Victor looked at the fire, at the photo, then finally at the letter. No, he said. Victor stood slowly, joints stiff from hours in the cold. I don't want the jet. I don't want the board. Not now. Mason nodded. He was loyal, but not blind. He'd known for years that Victor was a man haunted by something deeper than ambition. Now he saw the shape of that ghost. Find her, Victor said. The girl. Mason frowned. She didn't leave a return address. Victor's voice was firm. You found me. You'll find her. Mason didn't flinch. He would. But before he left, Victor added one more thing. Tell the board I'm on leave. Indefinitely. Mason's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he nodded again. And as he stepped outside into the snow, he glanced back at the cabin. The feared billionaire of America standing alone by a dying fire, clutching the last piece of his past. 3 days passed. Victor remained in the cabin. He didn't call anyone, didn't check stock prices, didn't issue orders. He sat, he walked, he thought. He reread the letter over and over until the paper felt like cloth in his hands. Mason, meanwhile, moved through quiet channels. Old records, discreet investigators. Off-the-record favors, until one name surfaced. Lena Rachel Monroe, age 25, profession public school music teacher, lives in Asheville, North Carolina, no social media, no known family, just a quiet woman, with a letter that had shaken a titan. When Mason called Victor, there was only one question. Do you want to see her? Victor didn't respond right away. He stood by the cabin window, staring at the forest beyond, a place that made him feel small enough to think clearly. Yes, he finally said. Mason arranged everything with quiet efficiency. No press, no jet, no entourage. Just one man, 2 bags, and a ticket to Asheville. Victor had never flown commercial. He didn't care. As he sat in the window seat, silent among strangers, he thought of the name. Lena, his daughter, a stranger. The plane lifted into the clouds, but his mind stayed buried beneath decades of silence. He rehearsed apologies that sounded too polished, then discarded them all. He would show up without words. Let her decide if any were worth saying. She lived in a quiet neighborhood lined with oak trees and mailboxes still painted by hand. Victor stood at her doorstep for nearly 10 minutes before knocking. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised, only cautious. She looked like Rachel, but with sharper eyes, steadier hands. Hi, she said. Victor nodded. I didn't come to explain or justify or erase anything. She tilted her head slightly. I didn't invite you to do any of that. A long pause. I just wanted to see if you'd actually come. Victor looked at her, really looked. I wasn't sure I would, he said, but I'm glad I did. She stepped aside. Then come in. Her apartment was small, cozy, and alive with color. Bookshelves overflowing. A guitar leaning against the couch. Framed letters and student drawings on the walls. Nothing expensive. Everything meaningful. They sat. Not as family. Not yet. As two people who shared a wound neither had words for. She made tea. He accepted. And then she asked, Did you ever think about me? Victor didn't hesitate. Every year on your birthday, every time I saw a little girl in a park, every time I failed someone who trusted me. She nodded, letting the words settle. I don't want anything from you, she said. No money, no name, just space to understand. Victor exhaled. That's more than I deserve. She looked at him. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what we choose to do now. Days turned into a week. They met again. And again. They didn't force anything. No photo ops, no public announcements. Just conversations, stories, walks through quiet streets. Lena told him about her mother. Rachel's laughter, her kindness, her stubbornness. Victor told her nothing about Hale Global, only about the boy he used to be, the man who once believed success would save him from pain. And slowly, the wall between them began to soften. One evening, they sat at a small community concert where Lena's students played off-key but proudly. Victor clapped the loudest. He didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a man being rebuilt from the inside. News outlets speculated about his absence. Stocks wavered. The board panicked. But Victor didn't care. He read poetry again. He wrote in a notebook. Real paper, not digital. He sat in parks and watched strangers. And each time he met Lena, he felt less like a ghost. Then one day, she gave him something. A letter. Unopened. From Rachel. It had been found in an old box by Lena's grandparents, addressed to Victor but never sent. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside, Rachel had written, "If you ever come back to yourself, come find her. She's everything good in me. She'll teach you how to love what power never could." Victor walked for hours after reading the letter. Through neighborhoods he didn't know, past lives he'd never live. He thought about the billions sitting untouched, the towers with his name, the power he once thought untouchable. And he laughed, soft, quiet, because none of it mattered now. What mattered was this. He had been found, not by investigators, not by security, but by the one person who had every right to never knock on his door. And she did. A month later, Victor Hale resigned from his company. No press conference, no farewell. He left behind his empire and took with him only a pen, a journal, and a photograph. Now every week he visits a local school. He doesn't speak at lectures. He listens to teachers, to children, to a life he nearly missed. And every night, before he turns off the light, he writes one sentence. Today, I didn't disappear. Months passed. Victor didn't speak publicly, but word spread. The board at Hale Global appointed a new CEO. Investors panicked until the market stabilized. But behind the scenes, something else was unfolding. A quiet fund began appearing in unexpected places. Community programs, mental health clinics, shelters with no donors suddenly afloat. No press releases, no signatures, just anonymous deposits with a simple label, L+R. Lena understood immediately, Rachel and Lena, mother and daughter. It was never about erasing the past, only about honoring what still mattered. One afternoon, while helping set up a fundraiser at her school, Lena asked Victor, "Do you ever miss it?" He paused. "The empire?" She nodded. Victor looked out the window, watching a boy chase a paper airplane across the grass. "I miss believing it would make me feel whole," he said, "but I don't miss what it cost." Lena smiled faintly. "You're different now." He turned to her. "No, I'm finally who I should have been all along." That year, for the first time in decades, Victor celebrated his birthday. No executives, no catered dinners, just Lena, a cake, and a song played gently on guitar. At one point, she handed him a gift, a fresh leather journal, blank. "No more running," she said. He nodded. "No more disappearing." He flipped to the first page, took out his pen and wrote, "Day 1. The press eventually moved on. The most feared billionaire in America became a footnote, an archived legend, a cautionary tale. Or a ghost. But in a small town in North Carolina, he walked the same path each morning. Coffee in hand, notebook under his arm. People didn't point, they waved. He wasn't a mystery anymore. He was just Victor, and that, at last, was enough. It was during one of those quiet mornings, when the air still smelled like dew and chalk from the school nearby, that Victor sat on the edge of a park bench and watched Lena from a distance. She was laughing with her students, helping one of them fix a broken guitar string, the same string she once used to tie his letter shut. In that moment, Victor realized something. He would never recover what was lost. But maybe that was never the point. Maybe the point was to stop clinging to what couldn't return, and instead become someone worth staying for. He opened his journal and wrote, "It's not about being forgiven. It's about being honest enough not to hide anymore." Later that afternoon, Lena handed him an envelope. Inside was an invitation, not to a gala, not to a ceremony, to her classroom. "Guest speaker day," she said. "Come tell them something true." Victor hesitated. What would I even say? Lena shrugged. "Whatever you wish someone had told you before you built walls instead of bridges." He showed up, not in a suit, just in a soft gray sweater and old shoes. The kids didn't recognize him, but they listened. And when one of them asked, "Were you ever really that rich?" he smiled. "Yes, but I didn't realize how poor I was until I had to earn someone's time instead of buying it." That night, Victor walked alone through the quiet streets of Asheville. No bodyguards, no drivers, no destinations. Just one man with a full notebook and nothing left to hide. He passed a bookstore, stopped. Inside, he saw Lena reading aloud to children. She didn't see him, but he stood there a long time, watching. Not as a father, not as a billionaire, but as a man finally at peace with what he almost destroyed, and what he had the courage to rebuild. He left a note on the window, scribbled on a torn page from his journal. "I'm here. Even if you don't look up, I'm still here." The world no longer watched him, and for the first time in his life, he didn't mind. Victor Hale was no longer feared. He was simply present. Some people build walls around themselves to protect what they've lost. Others learn to open doors and wait for someone brave enough to knock. If this story touched you, comment, "It's never too late to open the door." Share this with someone who needs to know. Even the most feared can be found, if they choose to stop hiding.